We've cut the head off the monster. The evil system of campus kangaroo courts has been dealt a mighty blow. For years now, many Australian universities have had secret committees investigating and adjudicating rape. In a landmark Supreme Court case, these have now been declared illegal. Education Minister Dan Tehan recently instructed the university regulator, TEXA, that universities should leave these crimes to the criminal courts. This is a huge breakthrough, but I really need you all to step up and help me ensure that the universities take notice. I'm now launching a big campaign enlisting graduates of Australian universities, students, academic staff, parents and grandparents of young people planning to attend university. I need everybody with a university connection to write to chancellors and vice-chancellors, alerting them to what has happened and putting them on notice that we are watching to ensure they comply with the law. I've posted a draft letter you can use, which is on my website. We need to seize the moment to enlist thousands of people to do this across the country, to make sure universities have the courage to stand up to the feminist lobby and leave criminal law to the courts. Right now, young men at Australian universities are really at risk. The regulations many universities are using to adjudicate and make judgments about sexual assault are all about believe the victim justice, which toss out legal assumptions about innocence until proven guilty. The accused is denied access to lawyers and given none of the normal legal protections. A secretive, unsupervised committee determines guilt on the balance of probabilities and can impose serious penalties, including expulsion from the university. I've made videos with two men who've been victim of these illegal kangaroo courts, and I'm following up a string of similar cases. I've seen universities make decisions to withhold degrees or expel male students from colleges or universities after biased investigation by untrained university staff. What's happening is an absolute disgrace, and now we have a chance to put a stop to all of this. But it's going to take concerted action from large numbers of people. Feminist activists are going to be appalled if their carefully manufactured campaign is derailed, and they'll put immense pressure on universities to ignore the legal judgment and continue with business as usual. They've put years of effort into promoting the fake rape crisis and bullying universities into establishing these illegal courts. They're not going to give up easily. Take a look at this cosy little video filmed 2 years ago where feminists are discussing the success of the Hunting Ground campaign. The Hunting Ground is an American propaganda movie designed to promote the idea that campuses are crawling with rapists. The movie has been denounced by 19 Harvard law professors for presenting a seriously false picture of sexual assault at universities. It presents misleading statistics and misrepresents key legal cases. Yet this alarmist propaganda has been shown at universities across Australia. Here's Alison Henry, campaign director for the Hunting Ground Australia project, explaining how they pulled this off.
There'd been activism here in Australia amongst student groups and amongst sexual assault services, but it had been quite ad hoc. They hadn't really been able to get traction. And we also knew we didn't actually have data around what exactly the situation was in Australia. So when we started looking at the film, we realised that there did appear to be an issue here in Australia, and that there was evidence that there was a problem, but we didn't know enough about it. So what we saw the opportunity as being was having the film to open up a conversation with Australian universities, and that's exactly what the project's been able to do. We've been able to have screenings across Australia's universities.
Not just universities, the movie was also shown on the ABC, which is one of our public broadcasters. Amazingly, Michael Spence, Vice-Chancellor at Sydney University, was part of a group orchestrating screenings of the movie on campuses. Take a look at this diagram showing the project's plan of attack, which was banking on the Australian Human Rights Commission survey in 2017 to give them data proving there was a rape crisis. The survey proved to fizz for the activists, with 99.2% reporting no sexual assault. But the Commission ignored that and focused instead on high levels of sexual violence, which was actually mainly unwanted staring. Immediately, our lily-livered Vice-Chancellors sprang into action, preening for the feminists and promising to tackle this alarming situation. Here's Brian Schmidt, Vice-Chancellor at the ANU. Note that he's actually talking mainly about sexual harassment, and that's what's happening. Everyone suddenly stopped talking about a rape crisis. Suddenly the problem was this epidemic of sexual violence. where even the mildest form of harassment was presented as equivalent to rape.
Today, we received a report that for the first time provides us with a real understanding of sexual harassment and sexual assault at our university. It makes for extremely difficult reading. The results are shocking. The stories told by survivors are shocking and utterly devastating. On behalf of the university, I want to say sorry. I apologize to any student, to any staff member, to any member of our alumni community who has experienced sexual harassment or sexual assault or has not felt safe to report it.
Universities introduced rape counselling, sexual consent courses, huge new bureaucracies to deal with this crisis. And behind the scenes, the move was on to persuade universities to investigate and adjudicate rape cases. Appallingly, they managed to actually capture TEXA, which is our university regulator. In 2018, TEXA issued a guidance note to the universities which said, where incidents do occur on campus, off campus or online, TEXA will expect a provider to implement an appropriate and effective response, including where necessary, taking disciplinary action against those found to be responsible for assaults. And here's TEXA CEO Anthony McLaren telling the universities they need to hold perpetrators to account.
TEXA, the legislation we administer, and I personally expect universities and higher education providers to do everything they can to prevent sexual assault and harassment from occurring, to provide a safe environment for study, build a culture of respect, work with relevant agencies, support survivors of abuse, and hold perpetrators to account.
Unsurprisingly, the universities responded by setting up regulations to investigate and adjudicate rape on campus, which was exactly what the feminists wanted. It's simply outrageous that this regulatory body caved into the activist pressure with no thought at all about the fact that they're usurping our criminal law system to set up a blatantly unfair alternate process. Many of you have seen the wonderful footage of Senator Amanda Stoker grilling the TEXA bureaucrats about all this. Just watch them squirm.
It doesn't provide for access to the evidence that's been provided against a person, only access to the allegation. There's no power to call evidence in your own defence, no requirement for evidence against you to be sworn, no effort to ensure the reliability of evidence in the way that we would if something was done before a court. And there's no right to legal representation, even though the effect of an adverse finding can be the loss of all of the things I outlined a moment ago. And so, in addition to that, you've got no presumption of innocence, no right of appeal, and allegations, this is probably the worst part, only need to satisfy uni administrators on the balance of probabilities. Does TEXA regard this framework, which is reflected in the policies of most Australian universities, as an appropriate balancing of the real and serious needs of complainants with the fundamental rights to be treated equally of an accused?
As you said, this is a very complicated matter.
Agreed. But does TEXA regard that complete imbalance as acceptable?
Well, we haven't actually discussed this at the Commission in those terms, and it would be inappropriate, I think, for me to give an off-the-cuff response at the moment.
You've produced a report on it. TEXA has produced a report on this very subject in which the issue of the rights of a person against whom a complaint is made did not even get a mention. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, TEXA is engaging with this admittedly difficult subject. It shouldn't be a matter that's off the cuff.
I'd have to remind myself of the contents of the report.
Look, just in relation to the report, that report was how we saw things at the time.
Here's another document from the supposedly independent regulatory body produced last year, outlining the higher education sector's response to the crisis of sexual violence. The introduction of the document talks about the movie The Hunter Ground and boasts of its success in encouraging a global movement for change. I'm mainly recruiting people here to help me contact the universities over this issue, but if you have any extra time, it'd be great if you could also write to TEXA asking how is it possible that they sold out in this way. I'll put their contact details on my website as well. Anyway, so it all went on. Even as the universities were falling into line, the activists kept up the pressure. In 2018, they attempted to get the then Education Minister, Simon Birmingham, to set up a task force to bully universities to do more about the crisis.
Sexual violence is the biggest safety issue within our university communities at the moment, and we need an expert-led, independent task force to address it because we can't trust universities to do it themselves.
But Birmingham lost the education portfolio after the election, and Dan Tehan, his successor, shelved the task force. Look at this university story, which is quoting Birmingham's higher education officer complaining, "We were so close." We, meaning him and the feminists. The feminists have allies everywhere. That's what's really frightening. Anyway, then suddenly we had great news. Justice Anne Lyons from the Queensland Supreme Court determined the universities have no jurisdiction to adjudicate sexual assault. The case involved a University of Queensland medical student who was accused of sexual assault by another student. Wendy Mulcahy, the lawyer for the accused student, took the matter to the Supreme Court, arguing that UQ did not have the jurisdiction to adjudicate such matters. In her landmark judgement, Justice Lyons concluded that universities are only entitled to make decisions in sexual assault cases which have been proved in criminal court. This means it's not the university's job to investigate or determine guilt in such cases. Justice Lyons accepted Wendy Mulcahy's concerns that a university committee is ill-equipped to conduct a fair investigation. Lyons notes that it would indeed be a startling result if a committee comprised of academics and students who are not required to have any legal training could decide allegations of a most serious kind, but without any of the protection of the criminal law. I'll actually put that judgment up on my website as well. It's very telling that there's been no reporting of this pivotal judgment in most of our mainstream media. Prior to the judgment, the ABC reported all the lurid accusations being made by the accuser, but not one word from our esteemed public broadcaster following the verdict. Isn't that a disgrace? The exciting follow-up to this legal judgment was a speech at the TEXA annual conference the following week by Education Minister Dan Tehan, alerting the conference to the Supreme Court decision and telling the universities to stop adjudicating rape on campus. Here's what he said.
Last week, the Supreme Court in Queensland made findings about the powers of a university's disciplinary board in relation to the institution's misconduct policies. The decision in Y versus University of Queensland has made clear that providers need to take great care when considering disciplinary action in relation to allegations of criminal conduct, to ensure that the protections afforded to individuals responding to those allegations are not infringed. Universities have a duty of care to their students, and that includes ensuring processes around the enforcement of any codes of conduct are legal, fair and transparent. If a student alleges they are a victim of a crime, then our criminal justice system is the appropriate authority to deal with it. These are complex matters and there is substantial legislation, case law and legal precedent available to anyone accused of a crime.
So the cat is now out of the bag. Our illegal kangaroo courts have been exposed for what they are, and our universities have been told to vacate the territory and let the criminal courts do their job. This won't happen unless we get active. After so many years of kowtowing to the noisy feminist lobby group, universities will need persuading that the majority of quiet Australians care enough about what's going on here to insist they do the right thing. I've got just the thing to make this happen. A brilliant little social media video produced by a friend to tell the universities we're watching them. We all need you to get it out there on social media, so please circulate it widely. You might like to contribute a few dollars to help promote it so we can pull in the big numbers to get our message across to the universities. Details about donation are here below the video or on my website. Thanks so much, everybody. I hope you're all on board to help me make sure 2020 is a year for real action to achieve fair treatment for men. Thanks everybody for supporting me on my YouTube channel. I've got growing numbers of subscribers, which is really exciting. If you'd like to support me financially, go to my donate page on my website. Thanks a lot.